Happy Friday, everybody. Let me just give me a couple minutes so I can get things together. I'll turn my fan on. I hope the fan noise. Hey, Dew, how are ya? I'm so happy my comments are working this week. They didn't work last week. Like I said, happy Friday. Welcome back to my craft room. Thank goodness it's Friday. It's been a crazy week. So, as everybody knows, I've been showcasing So Much Love all week long, and this is item number 152667, and this stamp set comes with 6 stamps. There's 2 floral stamps. One is a little larger than the other, and it's got some little dots and 3 different sentiments. And I used black and gold this week. I fell in love with the Magenta Madness and the Just Jade combination. And then I paired it, you slept all day, Dew. Then I paired it with the So Saffron, which ended up being a really nice card, just with the burst of color. And then I colored the flower with Rococo Rose, and then used the Flowers for Every Season pattern paper with the Rich Raspberry, and nope, it wasn't Rich Raspberry, that's wrong. The Blackberry Bliss and the Rich Raspberry, and just no sentiment on this one, just for a note card. And then for today's card, I use colors, hi Nan, that I would never have thought to put together. And again, I use the pattern paper from Flowers for Every Season, and that was in the 6x6 pack, and it has a variety of different papers, and I just seem to fall in love with this bumblebee, I guess, what is it called, the bumblebee color. So I paired it with the cinnamon cider early espresso and used the larger of the stamps. And you're gonna just die when you find out how I did this. So let's get started. We're gonna use the basic card base, which is 8.5 by 5.5, and it's scored at 4 1/4. And then I added my layer of cinnamon cider. Just want to get my inside to the side so we don't get them all mixed up here. And we're just going to adhere this to the top layer, and I have to change my blade on my cutter because it's leaving rough little edges on me. I gotta get that done. I cut so much paper. So we're just going to layer this on, making sure it's centered and has the same amount of space all along the edges. And I'm using the glue so it gives me a little bit of wiggle room in case it's not lining up right. And that next layer is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. Then I have the early espresso, what frame set was this one, Nan? This is the Ornate Frames dies, and this one is from the Blossom and Bloom, and it's called, I want to say it's called Layers of Flowers. I may be wrong, but I'm almost positive it's called Layers of Flowers. Let's see if I have the set right handy, which I probably don't. I've been working with so many different sets, I haven't put anything away. Oh, here it is. Yeah, it's to the Blossoms and Bloom, and it's called Many Layered Blossoms Dies. This one. So those are the two different dies for the cards. Hi Faye, how are you? I love the names too. So here's the Early Espresso, and this one is, what did I say? That one was 5 3/8. This one is 5 1/4 by 4, and that's my next 3 7/8. And we are going to just again adhere this one to the Early Espresso, and again I'm using the glue so it gives me a little wiggle room. And on this paper you may want to watch your flowers because they are in all directions. This to me would seem like it was upside down, so I'm going to turn it over. And this layer I actually popped up on the card. I love my layers, and I love dimension on my cards, although it does cost extra to mail them. But I just figured as long as I am spending this much time on creating my cards, I don't mind paying the extra postage to mail them out. Okay, so we're going to turn it this way. I think it looks better. And again, I'm going to just set this on the card. Now this time you don't want to push down on your dimensionals too hard until you think you have it lined up pretty well. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we have a little dimension to the card. Then I took the cinnamon cider, and this is 2 inches by 3 7/8, and I actually took, and I don't think I left it out, but in the Ornate Borders dies, I didn't, I put it away, believe it or not. I just lined up the border on each side to create my border edge, and I'm just going to cut this little piece off right here. Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, that's that's DSP. This is really beautiful paper, and it's a nice paper pack, Nan, because this one has what is it, 40 sheets, I believe it is. Okay, so I am just going to glue this, make sure it is centered on my card, and this actually fits the same width of the, I keep calling it designer series paper, and I believe on the online store they now call it pattern paper. I like designer series paper better, I have to say. And then I have a strip of the Early Espresso, and I actually cut this at 1 1/8 inch, so I have a nice border for the cinnamon cider. So So we're just going to add that to the front of the card. And again, this is 3 7/8. And like I said, I like using my glue, so I have a little bit of wiggle room. And then I just have a strip of Whisper White, and this is 1 inch by 3 7/8. And what I did with this piece is I took the Bumblebee stamp pad and the dots and just stamped my dots, turning the stamp as I go so I don't get too much of a pattern, because I want it not to look too symmetrical. Just want them random. Just like that. And we're just going to now glue this down. Lining it up, making sure you have the right amount of space, top and bottom. I'm just going to lift it so I can see it a little better. And there is the layers for the front of the card. Now let's get to the flower. That's what everybody wants to see. Let's see, I have a piece of cardstock. Now what we're going to do, and I did actually color and fussy cut, but I'll show you how I colored this flower just to save on a little time, so you don't have to sit here and watch. But what I did for this card is I stamped, yeah, glue is the best, Stu. You need to win the lottery, man? Yeah, me too. There's so many different things I want. Okay, so what I did was I actually stamped 2 of the flowers. Let me just clean this off real quick, because this is the fun part. Okay, and then I colored. Now you'll be amazed, and I'll show you what the colors I used. And just so you know, I am in the process of creating a class on how to color with blends. I've had a lot of people ask, and sometimes they do not blend that well. So I use, if you've ever seen, I use the bullet tip of the marker when I'm first coloring, and then because the ink doesn't come out as quickly, and you don't have as much bleed. Then when I'm trying to finish the flower off, when I want all the colors to merge, I use the brush part of the marker, so a lot of ink comes out. Sorry for my squeaky chair. So a lot of ink comes out, and it really soaks that paper and makes the colors bleed. So for coloring this flower, excuse me, believe it or not, I have used bronze. I used the light and dark cinnamon cider. I used the light and dark So Saffron. And then I used ivory. What a combination, right? So how I started, I'll do a few petals so you can get an idea of how I color my images. So when you're looking at an object that is flat, try to picture it how it would look in 3D. So you know anything that's sitting in front of something else, it's going to cast a shadow. So for instance, the center of this flower here, it goes deep and you have petals in the front. So I would add a space of darkness right down there at the bottom of the inside of this flower. Now this petal here sits behind these two, and there's a nice deep pocket there, so I'm going to add darkness. And then I'm going to jump to this one here so I can give you an idea. Here you have a lot of darkness because it's the back of the flower. If the sunlight was coming in on the image this way, this is far away from where the light source is, so this petal is going to be a little darker. So that was the bronze. Then I'm going to jump to the dark cinnamon cider, and again, using the nib, I'm just going to extend this color, not going over it, just going to extend that color. Add a little darkness here because that petal is flipped over, and a little darkness here because that petal is flipped over. Then I'm going to extend this out a little bit, extend this out a little bit, because I want to leave an edge for my So Saffron. Then I'm going to grab my light, and I am going to do it again, following this line, and just extending that color, and extending the color, and bringing it down into that corner, extending it here, and then extending it here. Now by looking at it, I'll bring it a little closer, but the colors aren't really blended completely. And then when you add the So Saffron, you have a real distinction of the colors. I'm just filling it in. Doesn't really matter what it looks like right now. Okay, so now the yellow is filled in. And I didn't want that yellow to be so bold, so I took the ivory, the brush tip of the ivory, and I am just going to sweep it over everything. Now this is a light color. I'm going over that folded piece and this folded piece, and I'm going over the whole petal. Now you'll notice, because this is a lighter color, you're going to notice that it's really the edges are starting to bleed. So what I did was I went to my light So Saffron while it's still wet on the brush side, and I'm going to go over the whole thing again with the light So Saffron. That'll tone down and make the flipped over edges nice and light, and again it's going to make all those colors, as it dries, all those colors are going to bleed, and that's how you get this look on the flower. Hi Peggy. So that's how I colored my flower for this card. Now for the leaves, I actually used the dark mossy meadow, and I used the dark and light old olive and just jade, plus the light So Saffron. And again, the same thing. Your leaves are towards the back of the flower, so it's going to cast a shadow. So I took my darkest, and I'm just going to put a nice line of darkness between the flower and the leaf. Here there's a little bud right over top. So I'm just going to very carefully go against that little bud and stem. I got to turn it now so I can see my line. And then the same thing on this side. I'm just going to go up and around. Okay, so that would be your shadow. Then I took the dark old olive and I am going to just blend a little. The leaf here turns, so this side is going to be a little darker, and then we'll have darkness and a shadow around that little bud. And then again, this side would be your dark side. Now on this one, it's tilting the other way, so our darker side, the leaf will be flipped under on this side, and I'm just going to just give it a little blend. Okay. Then I'm going to grab my light old olive, and this time I'm just going to extend that line a little, outline the other side of this leaf, go up the center, and all I did was make a few lines just to add some green to those lines. Same thing on this one, and the same thing on this. I just want to add a little color, go up the lines, and then I took my saffron with the brush end and just brushed over the whole leaf just to get those colors blended. And then it just gives a little reflection of the flower in the leaves. And that's how I colored my flower. Thanks, Peggy. Hi, Kathy. Good to see ya. So there's my flower. And then I fussy cut it out. And this is what I got. So then, just so you know, the Just Jade is what I use to color the stems, because this one here, just so it would be differentiated, I guess that's the word, between the leaf and the stem, I use the Just Jade. Okay, so I did that throughout, colored it just like this throughout the whole flower and the leaves, and that was my first image. Then I colored the image the second time, but what I did was I colored, and I don't want to ruin it, but I colored this center here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 petals. Excuse me. So that is the very center of the flower, and I colored that in, and then I colored 1, 2, 3, the next 3 petals on that layer, and I colored those in. So it was a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 petals I colored in the same way. Like I said, first, if you joined late, oh, you're welcome, Faye. I don't know if you had heard before, but I am in the process of putting a class together, so it may help. So that's what I did. So I just, again, we're going to just, wherever the darkness would be, and you don't want to do it on every single one really dark, just where it is, where it would be really deep within. Now, if I was going to go on further, I would do it here, I would do it here, I would do it here, and I would do it here. Those would be my darkest. And I honestly, I didn't do it on this flower, but I also use my pencils too. For my shadows, I use Prismacolor pencils, and I use the indigo blue. It's a great shadow color. And then I would follow through. Take my dark cinnamon, what did I say? Cinnamon cider, and extend that color a little bit. Don't worry about it blending together right now. Grab the light cinnamon cider, extend it a little more. And I know when you're coloring, you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's not blending. Don't worry about it. It all comes together. And then I grabbed my dark So Saffron, did the edge of the petal. I didn't do the fold. Okay, just where it's white, add your So Saffron. Then I grabbed my ivory, went over the whole petal and the folded over part. It's a lighter color. It's going to tone down the yellow, and it's just, the alcohol in this marker is just going to make everything blend together. Then I use my light, and while it's still wet, you want it wet so all that ink starts to work together. The light So Saffron going over it, and it just, like magic, all blends together. You don't have those harsh marks in between. So now we have our petals all colored. We're gonna fussy cut. So we're going to fussy cut that center. Here's the center. Actually, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 petals. Sorry about that. So it was these 6 middle petals surrounding the little stamens. I think that's what they're called. And I fussy cut it out. Now, when you're looking at it, and if you put it up against a colored piece of paper, and when you cut, you didn't hit the lines exactly, I take a marker. For this one, I don't mind, because that's the big one, and it's sitting up against this white background. But now, once we have this cut out, when we put it up against the flower, you really don't want to see those white edges. So I actually took, I don't have any grays in the blends right now, so I have my Copic, and I'm just going to very carefully get rid of those white lines, just very gentle. You don't want it to really bleed, because now you're on, you know, a raw edge. So you just color that so your lines are not white. So you cut that out. Then you cut out your next layer. This is the next layer of petals on the front of this flower. So we're going to fussy cut that out. And the same thing, check to make sure your edges are not white. If they are, just add a little bit of color. Trying to be pretty careful, because you don't, like I said, you don't want it to bleed. Okay, so there you go. So what did I do next? Craziness, huh? I'm just going to cut some smaller pieces from the dimensionals, and we are going to take this petal, oops, and pop it up. Sticking to my finger. And I probably forgot to mention at the beginning, but when you do color with your blends, if you're worried about your tabletop, make sure you put something under, because it does have a tendency to bleed through. Okay, so all I did was I took that outer layer, added some dimensionals, just like this, and we are going to line this up in the exact spot. It's almost like paper piecing. Well, let me just grab my, now that I'm looking at it, I can see a white spot here. I'm just going to line this up so it matches the flower, the petals underneath. I'm just going to hit this edge. It's just a little bit of white there. Okay, so that's that one layer. Thanks, Sue. So then I took this middle of the flower. Now for this one, I grabbed an X-Acto knife, and I'm just going to do it right here. And I took an X-Acto knife, and right where these stamen, I think that's what they're called, correct me if I'm wrong, the stamen inside the flower, I'm just going to cut a slit right along the line where the top of that petal is. See if I got all the way through. I don't want to cut myself. I think I did. Let me just try. Yep, it's through. And with the peony dies, I cut out the stamens from the peony dies. And for this little flower, in the center of this flower, I just thought it was a little too bulky, so I just cut little triangles in between to extend these little arms or legs, or just so it was a little bit more dainty for this flower. Just go up and down each one. Let's see if I can pull, there we go. And it just makes it a little bit more wispy. And just going to pick up the flower. We're going to feed this through that little slit you just created, just like that. And I am going to cut another small piece of a dimensional, because I really don't want to see it. And I could use a black one, but that's okay. We'll use the white. We'll tuck it in. And lift it up, get it as far down as you can, and stick this dimensional. Let me just pull the paper off the other side, because I don't want these to lay flat. I wanted it to have a little bit of dimension. So we're just going to stick this way down here towards the bottom, fold it over, and then it's puffed out a little bit. And then we're just going to trim off this tail so we don't see it. And then we're going to add a double layer of dimensionals, because we want this center of the flower to stand out even further to give it more dimension. So we want to make sure this layer of the flower, I try, man. And then again, the same thing. We're going to line this up so it matches the petals underneath. Don't push it down until you get it right. And that looks good. And then there's your flower. Now I'm not going to do it to this one either, but even if you wanted, you could take some Nuvo drops and put a little tiny dot on the end of these little pieces, just to add a little bit more, to make the flower look even a little more realistic. So let's just get this out of the way here. We're going to flip this over, and I actually added more dimensionals to the flower to pop it up onto the front of the card. And like I said, you could add any sentiment you wanted to the center. I have so many things that are going on. I need cards for a lot of different occasions, so I left the sentiment out. So we're just going to center this in the middle of the card. I think I added 2 little cinnamon dots. I will put one here. I usually like putting them in the corners, but we'll just add 2 little dots. And then I didn't grab my ribbon. Gosh, I hope it's like right here. Here it is. This is the white ribbon from, what did I say this was from? I think, again, it's from the Flowers for Every Season bundle. It comes with 3 different ribbons, and we're just going to tie a bow. If anybody needs to know how to tie a bow, you hold it in your pointer and thumb, take your ribbon and wrap it around your fingers, lift your thumb, and then hold that in place. Take this tail, put it through your fingers, making sure you keep everything nice and straight, and then through the bottom of your fingers underneath that ribbon, and pull your tail. Take your tail again, and this little piece, sorry if it's getting wonky, but this little piece here, you're going to take your tail, put it through that loop and over to the right of the piece that's coming through your fingers, and pull. Pull it nice and tight. Grab your tails, really pull it tight. Then take it off your fingers if you can. Usually it gets stuck like this one did. Okay. Now to get your loops straight, you can pull on your loops. They look like they're pretty straight. Fix your tails as you like to pull them down. Grab a good pair of scissors. Cut your angles for your tails. I'm going to grab a glue dot, but I don't even, let's use these glue dots from the paper pumpkin. What did I do with my little, forever losing stuff in front of me. Just going to grab a glue dot from, this is from my my last paper pumpkin, I believe. Let's see if I can get this off. And I just stuck it on this leaf here, just like that. Add your bow and give it a little puff. Make sure it's nice and there we go. And then there is your, oh, here it is. See, knew it was right there. So for the inside of the card, I just kept it simple after doing so much work on the outside of the card. It is a layer of cinnamon cider, and this is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and then a layer of Whisper White, 5 1/4 by 4, and then I took a strip of Bumblebee, because I like to tie the outside of the card to the inside of the card. And this is actually looks like about 3/8 of an inch. And we're just going to glue this down. Oh, no, we're not. Before I do that, just wipe it off a second. What I did to tie the inside to the outside is I took my Bumblebee again. Let me just wipe this stamp off. And I wanted to make sure, like I said, tie the inside and the outside. So we're just going to put some of these dots just across the bottom of the card, turning the stamp as you go, just so you have some little dots across the bottom to match the outside of the card. And then we're going to take our strip of Bumblebee, add in my glue so I can move it around, and I'm just going to go right over top of these dots just so they peek through. Make sure this is, just going to lift it up so I can make sure it's on there straight. Okay, I'm going to have to grab my cutter, but we'll wait. And then I did another strip, and this is probably 1/4 of an inch of the DSP. And again, we're just going to add some glue. I know it's going to be too much, but that's okay. And we're just going to make sure this is in the center all the way across. And I'm just going to grab my little cutter and give it a good trim. This way it'll be nice and straight. Do it on this side. Okay. Now we have nice clean edges. And we're going to glue this to our cinnamon cider. Get it even. And then glue it to the inside. There we go. Okay, and just like that, here's tonight's card. With the So Much Love stamp set. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I hope you get a chance to create this card. Always right in front of me, yep. Yeah, the black dimensionals, I do have them. I have them right here. I actually did, again, this is from last year's paper pumpkin that I saved. I'm using them for next week's projects. That's why they weren't with me. I'm already working on next week's cards. 3 down, 2 to go. So here's tonight's cards. I hope you like them. Here's my hostess code for this month. This stamp set is $20. And I hope you have a great rest of your Friday. And thanks, Nan. and I will see you next week. I'm going to be working on my YouTube video for the poinsettia card. This one with the Flammarion, and I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure. So look for it on my YouTube channel. It's under Jane Prophet, because this will be on it. So have a great night, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining me tonight. Share this video, and I'll be giving something away on next Friday. Thanks, Kathleen. You're welcome, Kathy. Great to see you. Have a great night. Like I said, share the video, and I'll have a free gift for whoever shares.